is that we know that that isn't good. It isn't good, but again, we need to make sure that we have those protections. We also need to be demonstrating leadership when it comes to issues such as climate change and the environment. And we'll have COP soon in Mexico, and again, that'll be an opportunity to again strengthen international regimes. One of the things that Canada has traditionally been well known for is our international leadership, particularly on areas of multilateralism, the International Criminal Court as an example. On COP11 in 2005, we had the most successful COP ever in dealing with developing a clear climate change regime internationally. That, of course, was very, very important, and the former Liberal government did get a lot of accolades because of that, and again, it's because of the fact that, again, we demonstrated that kind of leadership, and we need to continue to do that. We need to continue to be able to say that if protectionism is wrong, this is what we're prepared to do with our allies, with others, in order to focus forward. When we see issues like the European Union. The European Union, of course, has some very stringent policies, particularly when it comes to foodstuffs, particularly in terms of even the colorization of food. And so we have to be able to talk about those issues with colleagues. We've seen them sometimes react to issues in this country, and we need to have that strong voice, Mr. Speaker, on those issues. And of course, some of my colleagues, particularly from Newfoundland and Labrador, well aware of the issue with regard to the seal hunt. And again, what are we doing to educate? What are we doing to get our message out on some of these issues so that these sudden trade barriers do not come forward and obviously to harm the interests of Canadian farmers, Canadian producers, whoever they happen to be. And again, Mr. Speaker, I think it is very instructive to look at what has gone forward when we made an agreement with Israel in 1997 that was an opportunity to start further negotiations, obviously, in areas of the Middle East. And of course, the Jordan one, C8, will build on that. But again, we have the Gulf trading area, which is extremely, Middle East trading area, which is very important, from the United Arab Emirates all the way to Algeria, in terms of ensuring that, again, there's a market we could penetrate. So in other words, what's the strategy? What's going to be the policy in order for us to move forward? And on this side of the House, we're quite willing to, I know, work with the government to develop that kind of strategy, because it's in our interest, that is our interest as a nation. And so if we do those kind of things, I think, Mr. Speaker, we will in fact serve our citizens very well. And again, Mr. Speaker, on one area on non-agricultural products, this is something again where I think, particularly in areas of fish, seafood, construction, these are things that will be helpful in terms of for our markets. But again, it's only one part of the puzzle here. And I think that one of the things that would be nice is to see a really strong policy in which the government, members of the opposition, members from various key sectors that deal with international trade get together and really hammer out the kind of policy, what kind of tools do we need in order to be much more aggressive. The Americans certainly have been sitting idly by. The Australians in particular have been very aggressive in Asia, and in doing so, Mr. Speaker, they have in fact reaped a number of benefits. ASEAN, of course, which was getting closer in terms of trade issues with China, now realizes, in their view, that they can't put all their eggs in one basket. And so what they're looking at is, where is Canada on the international stage? They see where the Australians are, they see where the Americans are. They're saying, well, you need to be there. Some people don't know, Mr. Speaker, that in Indonesia, for example, we are the 5th largest investor, particularly in areas of mining. But again, it's again not necessarily coherent in terms of our approach. It's not necessarily a policy in which we simply say, well, you go out there and good luck. That's not the way to build good trade relations. Obviously, I think we support the faster elimination of tariff barriers, particularly on those areas, Mr. Speaker, which are important to Canadian industry. Panama and this agreement will see the elimination of at least 90% of current barriers dealing with goods coming from Canada. That's obviously a positive. But again, where are those big deals that we need to hear in this House? Where are those big negotiations going on? And we are watching, particularly on this side, very carefully the issue with Korea. That is very, very important because of the nature of that market. And I think, again, we need to be able to say to our businesses, there's tremendous opportunities out there. We don't want to be just dealing with our American friends. That's great. But given policies there as well, we need to make sure that we're at the forefront. We were one of the first major countries, Mr. Speaker, in China, and we had a tremendous opportunity there, and we had, under Mr. Chrétien, a number of Team Canada missions in the 1990s. We were leaders. Unfortunately, relations with China changed with governments here, and I think we lost a lot of ground. And again, that's something that we have to continue to have also a consistent policy in how we're dealing with our trading partners. And what is it? We can't be all things to all people. We have to have a particular niche. And if it is, for example, on the environment, I can tell you that in the Pearl River Delta, we could have a whole Team Canada just dealing with environmental issues in the Pearl River Delta. There are days, Mr. Speaker, where the smog is so thick that it rolls into Hong Kong, you can't see across the harbor. And therefore, we need to take advantage of those things. And the people cry out and say, we need to see Canada there. And therefore, I think that would be very helpful if we would do that. And I would hope that, again, although we'll support this going to committee, we want to look at, again, the issue of labor to make sure that those guarantees are there. We want to make sure if there's things that can be strengthened, be done. But again, we welcome the opportunity. But again, we want to see the bigger picture. We want to be able to see more emphasis on multilateral. And if that goes forward, I think, Mr. Speaker, we will benefit Canada in our future trading relationships around the world. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Abbotsford.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend for his intervention on this bill and for his support of the Canada-Panama Free Trade Agreement. And he's also correct in suggesting that Canada, as one of the great free trading nations, needs to develop new trading relationships. Where his argument falls down, Mr. Speaker, is the suggestion that previous Liberal governments somehow were able to achieve much more in the area of international trade. In fact, if you look at the record of the previous governments, it's really an appalling record. For years, the previous Liberal government tried to conclude an agreement on approved destination status with China. It never happened. Our government got the job done. I also referred to additional free trade agreements which he never referred to, which our government has been able to achieve. For example, the European Free Trade Association, Peru, and I refer now to the European Union, which is negotiating a free trade agreement with Canada. So would he not agree with me that this Conservative government's successes far surpass the record of the previous Liberal governments?
Good.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, the member better define what he means by appalling, because my definition of appalling and his is obviously different. And I give the example of the preferred destination status with China. The member checks the record. In the fall of 2005, it was our government that actually had an agreement in place. There was something called an election, which this government, of course, it precluded, obviously, the final signing of that agreement. My question would be to the member, which is a rhetorical question, I realize, is why did it take you almost 4 years to finally get that finalized when we'd already done all the work? The work was already done there. December 2005, that destination agreement was there, and we lost 4 years, Mr. Speaker, of an opportunity to really showcase Canada, because those guys over there, unfortunately, were ragging the puck. Yes, ragging the puck, absolutely. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Elmwood Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members will know that the total two-way trade between Canada and Panama in 1999 was only $132 million, and the imports to Canada from Panama were only $21 million, and with that, half of that was refined heavy oil. So the fact of the matter is that the members know that the trade is not going to stop tomorrow if we don't implement this trade deal. And for a government that pretends to be tough on crime, it is somewhat surprising that they would be ready to implement a free trade deal with a country like Panama that was blacklisted by the OECD in 2000 as an uncooperative tax haven. In fact, there's 350,000 foreign companies registered to hide from the tax man in their home countries. So why would the Liberals get in bed with the Conservatives to facilitate this agreement when what we should be doing is following the American example and holding off and forcing Panama to sign tax agreements so that we can have an exchange of tax information from these tax evaders? This Liberal opposition is facilitating the government in actually promoting tax evasion if they support this initiative.
The honourable member from Richmond Hill.
Well, I certainly am not an advocate for getting into bed with the Conservatives, the NDP, or anybody else. Although I know the NDP's had experience with being in bed with the Conservatives, particularly in 2005. But I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that one of the things that free trade does provide us is an opportunity to deal with liberalization and political liberalization, etc. And Panama has come a long way from the Noriega days. There's no question that there is continual liberalization and continual improvement within Panama. And I think one of the things that at least this party believes in is engagement. You cannot see improvements unless you engage others. And therefore, the ability to engage, and this is one vehicle. And I understand that the member is concerned about those issues, and I would suggest to the member that when it comes to committee, there's an opportunity to look at those issues, to strengthen some of those issues. But that's why you go to committee, Mr. Speaker. You don't say, well, we don't like this because it's not perfect. If it's not perfect, well, you have to work on it, and that's why members deal with it in committee. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Berthier, Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say first of all that we feel that the Liberals really want to get into power again. With respect to the EI system, we've seen that the Liberals are starting to vote against workers. And Mr. Speaker, during the time of Prime Minister Martin, we remember how we in the Bloc fought against tax havens. This is where big companies who are often subsidized by Quebec and Canadian workers, this money is sheltered, so to speak, in other countries, sheltered from tax. And so this wealth is not redistributed to improve health care, education, and the lot of workers. How can this government, or rather how can this opposition want to go forward with free trade agreements which will bring workers' conditions, will put pressure on the workers' conditions, will start dragging them down? And this is with a country that also provides tax havens for certain companies, mining and otherwise.
Indicated earlier, one of the side agreements deals with labor. And I think, again, if the member has legitimate concerns on the labor issue, that's where at committee the appropriate witnesses, the kind of discussion needs to go forward in terms of strengthening these provisions. But if, in fact, we simply want perfection and say, no, if this is not here now, then we're just not going to engage with any free trade, then we can put up a big wall around the country, and obviously we won't be doing our businesses any favors, and certainly not the population. So again, engaging. And obviously, I think that there are provisions we can strengthen, but we can't strengthen it if we simply say, well, we're not going to do anything because it's not there now. I think that's why we have these discussions, and obviously why amendments are made at committee.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Vancouver Quadro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 2 years ago, I was on the International Trade Committee delegation to Panama, and